Welcome back to the Pot of Greed.
Welcome back indeed, folks, to the one and the only
podcast on the internet.
Yeah, there are no others.
It doesn't even feel fair to call us a Yu-Gi-Oh podcast. I feel like we're more than that, but we're also less than that at the same time.
That's true. It is true. Today, we're happy to say that we've got our very first guest on the podcast.
That's right, folks. We're one of those podcasts.
However, that will come shortly after we cover the news this week.
Because we still got to give you what you want. But before we get to the news, don't we have a review?
We do have a review. So this one comes to us from Mr. NHP. Gave us 5 stars and said, perfectly consistent. This show, just like their YouTube channel, always scratches the itch of Yu-Gi-Oh! When one may not have the opportunity to play locally.
Human back scratchers.
Just hearing the knowledge, love, and sometimes confusion by Konami about the game keeps me coming back. Thanks for what you do. Keep it up.
Thank you, NHP. What does that stand for?
I don't know, Mr. NHP. If you were listening, you can let us know. At least
I keep thinking
YouTube
of
comments.
NPH, Neil Patrick Harris, but it's not in that order.
I thought we were going to say we're going to Neopets for some reason. I don't know why.
I have absolutely no experience in Neopets. That was Alex's bag.
Anywho, though, thank you for the review. We always appreciate those. If you're listening on any particular platform, giving us 5 stars or whatever the review equivalent is, helps a lot. And if you're listening on YouTube, then thumbs up and maybe a ones in chat, yeah?
Ones in chat, Premier Gang, rise up.
Okay, so here's the thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! This week. There's technically not like any news.
I mean, there's not any news that we can really relate to you. I mean, news, things happen. It's just...
That's true. Like, Supreme Darkness formally is releasing this week.
That's right. If you are an OTS store, that means you can start buying it today, right?
Yes. Today when we're recording this is Wednesday, so it's
not
definitely
if you are an
Thursday.
OTS store. If you go to an OTS store, you can't be a store, right?
Furthermore, though, I was kind of just checking out what people are thinking about the set. It seems like that Molcharmy Meow is just expensive, kind of a little bit, got a price tag on it. I saw some drama, I guess we'll call it, about that Primite Barrel card. Did you see this?
No, what happened?
The Primite Barrel, I forget the full name, had like a typo. And
this one.
Yeah, and so it has this effect where it can like come back in a standby phase, and the typo said that it could come back during like the standby phase, but the OCG version of the card is like
only on your standby phase.
Like your standby phase, and people thought, like it's just going to be buffed in the TCG. But as it turns out, this was a mistake, and Konami has corrected it in the card database. Although we don't really know when they will print a new like copy of it, because they don't really do like unlimited edition runs of sets anymore. So all of this first run of Supreme Darkness will probably just have that typo, and
I imagine they're just going to slide into a reprint set as soon as they can. Just get that out the way.
Yeah. Other than that, though, any other stuff from... We didn't get to go to a sneak peek.
Yeah, we failed. We had one on the docket, and their sneak peek was kind of canceled.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Like, the shop that we normally locally go to was not, like, allocated sneak peek kits, so we had to look and see, like, okay, where are some nearby sneak peeks? And there were some that were, like, about an hour away. And we planned to go to one that was on a Sunday, and we weren't able to. But then it turned out it actually wasn't even on Sunday. It was on Saturday, so I guess we like technically missed it, or maybe there was something.
Even though I was also on that Facebook profile, and they had it scheduled on Sunday, so I don't know.
So long story short, no Supreme Darkness for us.
At least no early. I mean, we're still going to get it. I mean, I got to get my Evil Heroes.
This is true. But yeah, I got to get my water cards, and I'm glad to see that most of them are cheap. People don't seem to be like...
I think the Supreme Darkness is probably one of those more underwhelming sets where, like, there are good cards in it, but these aren't...
It's not,
meta-defining cards.
Yeah, there's not kind of write home about cards, I think, if you're like a competitive player. Like, obviously, there's a few, but it does feel like people aren't fiending after this set, maybe like they were for like a Rage of the Abyss or Infinite Forbidden.
I think it's going to be a very top-heavy set where... like 1 or 2 cards will have pretty much 90% of the value.
Yeah. So if you guys did get to go to the sneak peek for Supreme Darkness, or now if you're just like opening it, let us know. How did it go? What have you pulled? What are you
quarter
building?
Centuries did you get?
Yeah, get any good QCRs? Would love to hear about that. Okay, so here's something neat. Hypeland announced these Millennium Puzzle Puffer jackets. Have you seen these?
Oh, that is sick.
These are so cool. I actually really love these.
Those are the best design Yu-Gi-Oh jackets I've seen yet.
Yeah, these are so Hypeland. If you guys don't know, they make a lot of different crossover sort of like branded clothes, but they make Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, which I really like. I'm not glazing because here I'm going to be honest. I don't love all of their Yu-Gi-Oh stuff.
Okay, we're not glazing anymore.
But I will glaze over
sponsorship.
these. I will glaze over these. These look good. Some of their earlier Yu-Gi-Oh designs I feel like were kind of restricted in what they could do. Like it just felt like they were just taking anime like.
Yeah, I think they were limited in what they were allowed to do originally, but they've done it so many times now, and the results have been quite like good for them. So
yeah, they've
now
like
they can kind of just
it seems like they gave them the they've been like licensing Yu-Gi-Oh out to a bunch of different accessory places lately. And I think like early on, they're just like, okay, you are only allowed to use kind of these preset images of these characters.
Yep.
But now it feels like they're able to explore more and do more. And I think these are looking really cool.
It's like that one company that makes like pendants for chains, and you can get the like encrusted Millennium
It's something
puzzle.
Ice. I forget what the name of that
I forget their name. So you always see like Facebook ads and stuff.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's like, Konami, what are you?
It's very gaudy.
What are you doing?
I mean, it's for some people. But
yeah. I mean, it's for some people. Like, it's cool. It's all right. But Paul, you were just talking about how you're sick of my jacket and you want me to change into a new one. Well, if I had a Hypeland puffer jacket,
right? Okay, that'll have to be the one. Yeah, it's not like Alec. He always wears the same jacket. Press 1 if you think Alec needs to change jackets in the next
I will
episode.
only change if it's into a Hypeland puffer jacket, preferably the darker one, but I would not mind either.
Yeah, these look really cool. And they actually dropped this Saturday. So, like, literally when you're listening to this, hurry and join their... They have a Discord server. I think you can get, like, early access or something. It's a whole thing, but you can figure out more about that on their own social media. I just thought that this was really cool and people would like to see it. I think that's actually, like, kind of it for news, though. Like
For Yu-Gi-Oh? Yeah. I mean, we're getting a new set release. We're gearing up for a new format.
The release date for the number 39 Utopia figure has been announced. This is just this Utopia figure that's like in the OCG. It's releasing in September. Company? I don't know. I think this is actually just an official one from Konami.
That looks a little too good for Konami.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really cool. But yeah, it comes out in September, and there's just some color images of it. So,
you sure that's not Bandai?
It doesn't look like it because typically they'll say it might be one of those other figure makers though. And here it is beside a Yuma and an Astral. So.
Oh, look at little Yuma.
3 of them.
I win this duel.
That's Arc 5.
Oh, okay. I don't remember any Zexal songs.
What is Zexal is something about like believing in yourself.
Can you feel the power?
If life is a game, they say I can't win.
Oh,
I never amount to
yeah,
nothing.
That's the one.
And then there's like Halfway to Forever. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a Zexal nerd, but someone in the comments knows. Okay, that's all at Yu-Gi-Oh! As far as I know. Like, there might be other little small tidbits, but
that's not all for card games now, is it?
Of course it's not.
So, guys, I typically will bring you a Pokemon crime story, but this is a different type of Pokemon crime. It's not that we're stealing Pokemon cards. We are actually purchasing them legally through violence.
Yeah, we're just fighting.
So you'd have to be kind of underneath a rock to not know about the
Costco violent brawls that have been happening.
Because we talked about before how shops are declining to even carry these next Pokemon products because of
in fear of
crime and violence, and it turns out those shops may have been right to do so.
I've seen a bunch of videos. I mean, actually, I talked about it last week because that was when I saw that first Costco video, and it feels like I guess more of them have just dropped since then. Like just more violent fighting videos and like people getting knocked down. It's like
because some places are prepared for Pokemon nonsense and they heavily limit the product. They don't even let you touch the Pokemon cards without some type of a line or system in place. Mm-hmm. But there are different stores in different locations who they are not really they don't use the internet. They're not really up to snuff on what's going on. And they just have Pokemon product just sitting there waiting for people to absolutely lose their minds.
Here's what I've noticed. Okay, so here's a video I found. This is just one of them. This is one where like somebody falls. Like I'll describe it if you're an audio listener. Yeah, this is at a Costco They've destroyed this pallet of cards.
Oh my
Somebody
gosh.
falls or gets knocked down, and instead of helping the person, people grab some of the
They
Pokemon
grab the
boxes
product that he dropped.
and then they run off with
Yo,
it.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in his face. They don't care.
It's like, what is this, Black Friday? Like in 20 years ago? Like when people would just...
I remember I don't know if this is the same video, but in the video I saw, someone had grabbed onto another person, looks like in a Costco, and elbows them directly in the face, trying to like run away with the product. And the one I'm showing right now, they are running through the aisles because that's how serious this is. We're running in stores.
So like, what's the... I guess like, I don't know, like what is the... It's so weird, like when you see people running, like something about that just feels like it's something's snapped, like something's gone too far.
No, this is a harsh take, so bear with me, guys. I know this is harsh. I honestly feel that as an adult, you should not have to run anymore. Like when you're an adult, the only time you should ever be running is if it's an emergency or if you're chasing your child. I feel like those are the only two times you should ever have to run. See, if you're running at any other point as an adult, you're being a child.
Well, see, here's the thing, though, is like, I guess in these people's eyes, it is an emergency.
They're crazy. That's what they are. They're infantile. Like, I've seen people kind of... Look, whenever... I've been to a lot of anime conventions, and typically what you'll see at a very hyped convention is when the doors open for the first time in the day, people just take off running like fucking children. That's all I can think when I see these guys running through Costco to get their Pokemon cards. Like you're 39 and you're sprinting down, or you're attempting to sprint down these Costco aisles to get your Pokemon product. Like,
yeah.
Do you have no sense of self? Can you imagine how crazy you look running for Pokemon cards?
I do think that there's like something to be said too about the whole pallet system that these shops are using or stores are using. Like, because it's Costco, it's all stuff in bulk, and so like you'll just have these pallets where it's just these like sealed wrapped like just chunks of tin each. Like of this huge
and people
box.
are grabbing as many as they can hold.
Something Waters.
I don't remember the name of the set.
It's one of these. It's like this Pokemon set that I think is Pokemon fans will know exactly what set that we're talking about. But like, it's like those where they do those like really wide boxes. They're like this wide and like they're just and like there'll be like 10 of them together, just strapped together in like a packet and then a pallet, and the pallet's got like 20 of those. And so you see people just taking like 10 at a time, and it's like. You've got to have some sort of because as crazy as these people are, and I don't condone what they're doing, these stores need to limit how many you're even allowed to get. Like, you shouldn't be able to, like, let me just take all 10 of these and start running, because then when you start running, you're going to start dropping them, and then people...
You're actually a hazard. You're a safety hazard.
Yeah, like, it just becomes a whole mess. Like, how
is every store in the country supposed to know that Pokemon cards... make grown people act like babies?
Actually, I think that at this point you actually should know.
I mean,
there's a new headline,
think about it. Like, there are probably stores in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky that barely have internet access.
Okay,
but like they get allocated their Pokemon stock like everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, how are they supposed to know that today, when they stock their shelves on a regular Wednesday, that there will be a crowd of ravenous Pokemon fans ready to just break their necks behind picking up these cards?
Yeah, it's a shame. I think that they got to get that together. But I have another Pokemon story while we're at it.
What you got?
So Pokemon TCG Pocket unveiled their new trading feature, and it was not particularly well received.
I haven't tried it yet. Wait, I was on Pocket today. And I
don't know if it's out yet. I think they just announced like how it's going to work.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, they finally unveiled the incoming trading feature and how it'll work, but the community response was so poor that it had to release a follow-up response. So, there are severe restrictions on the incoming trading mechanic, which we talked about this before, and I was saying how like I feel like they're not going to make trading.
Yeah, we were spitballing how we thought it would work.
So complaints are headlined by the inability to trade cards of 2-star rarity or higher. That means no EX level alternative art cards can be traded. not in their basic forms, rainbow bordered forms, immersive forms, or
But what am I going to do with all my
crown rarity
immersive
forms.
Charizard EXs? I have 4 of them.
Creatures Inc. said only certain cards from the Genetic Apex and Mythical Island booster packs will be able to be traded, though it's unclear if this solely refers to the 2-star or higher restrictions or if there are further cards that will be banned from trading. So, yeah, that's kind of weird. Like, I just feel like...
I hate that, because once again, I have 4 Charizard EX immersive arts. Can I do something with them?
Yeah, I feel like that would be like the number one thing somebody would
just turn them into that dust stuff. Well, that feels like a waste.
It's all but confirmed that trading is going to arrive alongside the next full set, which is still due this month. But yeah, so other restrictions apply as well. Cards can only be traded between friends, which the community has
That
deemed
actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And only cards of the same rarity can be traded, which has been accepted too. I think that
also
makes
sense. I'm with that.
But yeah, the last element that's frustrated many, however, is that items must be consumed in order to trade.
That is such a mobile game thing to do. I respect it.
Yeah, so
it'll be a time gated currency like everything else in the game.
yeah, I think that they're going to people suspect that they're going to be doing like trade hourglasses. Mm-hmm. So something along the lines of like maybe one trade every 12 hours or just something, you know.
I feel like they might slow it down more than that, since essentially you get 1 pack every 12 hours.
Oh, so it might be like a trade a day.
Like, maybe one trade every 24 or worse.
Yeah, and because it's like only with friends, it's like, okay, you get to trade to your friend 1 card a day. Like really just bring it down that elementary level of like, you know, you and your friend trade 1 card.
To be fair, in mobile like trading card games, trading is extremely difficult to implement with any sort of like reliability, just because trading can break your system. If players are able to trade for the cards they need, that can completely disincentivize people from buying packs.
Things. Yeah, and that's the thing. I knew that when they announced that trading was going to happen, that it would, like I said, like we knew it would have to be probably pretty heavily restricted, because like people will sometimes say this about Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. They'll be like, you know, why can't we trade in Master Duel? Well, the answer is kind of obvious. Like, they need you to spend your gems and like buy things. They can't just let you be like, okay, let me just get exactly what I need from people, and then no one will really ever have to like buy more, because they'll just find someone who will trade them the thing. Not to mention, then there's like the risk of, oh, I just made a bunch of alt accounts and just use my free gems and trade. So, and I know like people are like, well, I should be able to get everything I want without trying anything at all, but like that's not how games work.
Nothing works that way.
It's just, again, they got to keep the servers running.
I did play one online trading card game that did have trading. I'm a big .hack fan, and at one point we had this mobile game called Guilty Dragon, and it was a card-based game. So it was a gacha system. So if I wanted to pull, you know, the most powerful like Azure Kite card or Black Rose or something, I had to pull for it. But it did have a fairly robust trading feature where if you were fortunate and had a card that someone wanted, and they also had the card you wanted, you could make the trade. And it worked exactly how you imagine any trading like software would work. A person posts what card they're looking for, and they post what cards they're willing to trade for it. And I think it was a lot of steps. And for me playing it on a Japanese app, I'm really surprised I learned how to navigate that. But it's not likely TCG Pocket will give us such a good trading platform. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't feel likely. So they're gonna time gate it. They're going to limit what we can trade. Like, rarity for rarity is solid, but I don't think they're gonna let us assign like, oh, I'm willing to trade, you know, my Pikachu EX, and I want, you know, one of these 5 cards. You might be able to post that you want 2 cards if you're lucky.
Yeah, so let us know, you guys. Are you playing Pokemon TCG Pocket and planning on like trading? I
saw revenue numbers last week. Yes, they are.
Yeah, I don't like play it as much. I mean, I still like open my packs, but I'm not as, you know, I guess into it.
Same. I open my packs, and I don't always do it every day, but I still open them.
Okay, last little TCG thing. Top 10 TCG sales tier list in Japan.
Oh, time to fight somebody.
Yeah, from December 2024. You guys know we always got to cover these because they can be really useful for just the conversation around like how card games are doing in different territories.
I'm gonna say it right now, Paul.
Okay.
I don't care what that list says. Yu-Gi-Oh is still in the big three.
Which I think is like true.
Like, I don't care what that list says.
Okay, so you can guess. Well, look, guess the top few. What do you think number 1 is?
Pokemon.
It is. What do you think number 2 is?
Number 2.
This one might surprise you.
Should be Yu-Gi-Oh.
It is Duel Masters.
I know, it makes
Duel
sense.
Masters, which normally isn't actually at number 2, but this time it rose.
It's usually it's high in Japan. We know Duel Masters is like a game.
And people
for them.
love their Duel Masters over there. Number 3.
All right. So, because Yu-Gi-Oh is not number 2, it should be number 3, but this is Japan. So the correct answer is One Piece.
Yes. One Piece is number 3. Yu-Gi-Oh is number 4.
Yeah.
And then White Schwartz is number 5.
Look at what's happened, y'all.
Also followed by HoloLive, Union Arena, Vanguard actually making its way back into this list because I think it wasn't in there in like the November version of this. Magic the Gathering at number 9, and number 10 is Shadowverse. So
what fell off? Lorcana?
yeah, so somebody was kind of pointing out the differences between this and the November list, which I don't actually know if we even talked about the November one, but anyway, somebody was saying that basically Duel Masters returned to its position as number 2, whereas One Piece dropped to number 3, so they basically switched. OCG Yu-Gi-Oh is now in 4th. It was previously in 3rd. Union Arena dropped 1. It was number 6, and now it's number 7. HoloLive is new to this list, and the Ultraman card game disappeared. Dragon Ball Super and Detective Conan also disappeared from the December list. And somehow Vanguard returned. It did not appear on the November list, but now it's back and it's in the 8th spot.
Somehow is a bit rude to Vanguard. A lot of people don't realize this, but Vanguard is quite an old like card game at this point.
Oh, by the way, when I said like surprisingly, that was like their word.
Yeah, and I
wasn't
their
saying like surprisingly Vanguard.
But yeah, Vanguard, like, it's been around for a minute, and it's always been more popular in Japan than it is in the States. So to me, it has to be in a top 10 conversation in Japan at all times.
I mean, I think my big takeaways from this are that obviously, you know, this is Japan and not America, so these games kind of, in some cases, function differently, have different product structures, and they're far, far, far more like, it's just a different set of cultural consumer tastes in terms of like what they like, what they play.
The very fact that Magic is so far down on their list, I mean, that's the biggest indicator. Though that and Duel Masters being so high on their list, that's a huge regional difference.
Yeah, there's real consumer tastes and preferences thing. I know we tell the story a lot, but like with Magic, you know, you go to some of these like card shops in Japan, and Magic's kind of just tucked into a corner. And
a lot of shops will not even display Magic. They'll have Magic, but it won't be in a display case.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's always kind of the looming, like, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh's dead, right? Like it's no longer a big 3 card game. I think what's happened with this particular list is you have to remember what came out in December for Yu-Gi-Oh in Japan. Because for us in December, it was only crossover breakers. So I remember when we were talking about like the TCG player sales, it wasn't really like amazing. But I think Yu-Gi-Oh didn't, if I'm following the OCG correctly, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that anything major actually came out. Because Supreme Darkness was already out from like November or October or November for them. And Alliance Insight isn't out until like later this month for the OCG. So, or like at the beginning of February. So there wasn't like a mainline Yu-Gi-Oh set at that point. So I'm not really like sure if there was like a major product and that could have affected this.
I don't know the OCG release schedule at all, so I can't even contribute.
Yeah, so I'm really just not sure. And I don't know, maybe One Piece had a new thing. But still though, you know, the fact that One Piece is consistently rivaling Yu-Gi-Oh, like just kind of trading spots with it in the top 3, top 4 spots and stuff, sometimes number 2 even, really goes to show like it is the Bandai game that has stuck.
I mean, we know that's the case even in the States, that One Piece is big. As far as product moving, One Piece is big. And, you know, now that I've been to a Bandai card game fest and I've seen the competitive atmosphere, One Piece is big.
Yeah,
it's competitive.
A lot of buzz. People care about their One Piece. So.
And, you know, and I think it helps that they're all former Yu-Gi-Oh players. Who said that?
Yeah.
Said that?
No, a lot of them are.
I said that.
But you guys can let us know, I mean, why you think some of these games sort of landed the way that they did. It's interesting to see that Union Arena is kind of, it's hanging on in Japan. It's pretty popular. I don't know if that's success. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was cutting you off, but Union Arena is a lot like White Shorts in the appeal of the game, except it doesn't go for as many like cutesy characters. It's focused more on these shonen anime for the most part. I know for a fact they have contradicted that already, but it'll always hang on, I think, just because it's featuring a lot of anime properties, and Japan is the home of anime. As long as they're releasing an anime in card form that they like, it'll just hang around.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if some of these things are reflected in the coming months here over in the West. Anywho, that's all my card game stories. You got any more card game stuff?
I accidentally turned off my tablet. I don't know if I do.
I'm sorry, the conversation's not engaging enough for
you.
you.
Do not. What? I was so engaged, I turned off my tablet.
Yeah, I guess that don't really make sense what I said. Okay, cool. Well, you got anything else then?
Do I have something else? I'm mad, y'all.
Why are you mad?
I'm downright pissed. You know why?
Flabbergasted.
Because Netflix is increasing their prices again.
The tomfoolery.
Because now, to be clear, I got to make 100% clear, I have the lowest tier of Netflix subscription.
Yeah, we know.
I have ads on my Netflix.
We were watching some anime on your Netflix account. I was like, what the fuck are these ads coming from? Anyway.
Because I even if I can technically afford a higher tier, I refuse to afford a higher tier. Well, Netflix picked up on that because they're increasing their prices. It says, despite already being the most expensive streaming platform in many markets, Netflix announced on the 21st it will be raising its prices once again.
Yeah.
As we continue to invest in programming and deliver more value for our members, we will occasionally ask our members to pay a little more so that we can reinvest to further improve Netflix.
Okay, so what are the prices now?
So, ad tier was $6.99. It is going to $7.99. They're taking a whole extra buck out of me. But it's worse for the rest of you guys. Standard goes from $15.49 to $17.99. And premium, $22.99 to $24.99. Now, I'll tell you right now, I would not pay $25 for Netflix every month.
Yeah, that's chunky change.
At that point, I would just steal it. And look, guys, I'm against piracy. I am. Well, at least I was.
I mean, I definitely think, like, you know, I try to pay for like subscriptions where I can, and like share with friends, obviously, share passwords and stuff. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, you know, that's typically what I do is like I try to find a friend who's at least paying, and it's like, oh, well, we're watching together at their house, so it's it's fine. But sometimes when I hear these price increases, it's like, man, these are steep. Like, it's crazy because so the ad supported tier is like now $7.99, and it's funny because I think that $7 was like the original kind of like Netflix price.
It might have been. It's been a long time since then, though.
Yeah, it's been so many years. Real quick, actually, you were telling me about something. Is kind of speaking of scams, a card shop scam you saw.
Oh,
I want you to tell.
I forgot about it because I couldn't get the link to it. So this is not a unique story because I've experienced a similar scam to this before. I was scrolling on Facebook and I saw an ad from what looked like from a card shop, and it was like all products 80% off, and I was like, well, that's steep. So I click on the ad, and it brings up a Facebook post from this card shop, and it's an online card shop. It says, due to continuous losses, our Magic the Gathering and TCG products are up to 80% off site wide, and I was like, that's huge. It's like, even if you're going out of business, you don't sell TCG, like just sealed TCG products for
a clearance
80% off. Because like that means I could get Supreme Darkness for like a few bucks. That doesn't make any sense.
For like a box less.
So I go to their website, and which I probably shouldn't have even clicked on their website because I already figured it was a scam. But I was curious. I open up the website and I see a format that I've seen before. Because I said again that this is not a unique scam. Years ago, I found a fake TCG seller. I thought that was a one-off thing from the past, but the websites were remarkably similar. I kind of scrolled through the website because it has all the different card games, and I wanted to see how much I could buy a box of the latest like One Piece set, and I looked at the latest Yu-Gi-Oh set, and I was it was offering me the chance to buy Supreme Darkness for $0.
Okay.
And the latest One Piece set was like $13. And I was like, okay.
So it's all just...
This is complete BS. And I go back. I'm like, I hope nobody's like buying into this. There were like 300 comments, and then so many fake positive comments of people who allegedly received product from them.
Yeah. So
I was like, oh no, this is
reviews or something.
It's a complete scam and it's BS. And I wanted to report it, but I accidentally reloaded my Facebook. So I was scrolling on my phone. I did that thing where my finger
just impulsively and now it's gone.
It was gone. But guys, be very. I mean, if you're listening to us, you can't be a fool, right? You guys know better. But
I like the whole promo there. If you're listening to us, you're smart. You're smart. You're big and strong.
You're the biggest guy in every room. No, but watch out for your TCG playing friends who you might label as a bit foolish, because people will get wooed by the idea of, oh, this only costs $0. What's the shipping? $578.
No, you're so right. I mean, like, people will get got fast. There's so many of those weird scams where, it's like something. It's like, this is $7.99 for a box of Supreme Darkness, and either shipping's really high or like the site will just disappear in a week, like after it's gotten your credit card info.
Because you're gonna put your actual credit card info in there. Yikes!
It's crazy. So, just thought it was kind of an interesting little thing that happened to you.
Paul, I swear it was 2 years ago the last time I saw one like this, and I remember back then I debated getting like a temporary card just to test the website
Yeah, sometimes
out.
people do that.
But I was like, I don't want to go through all the trouble of what's clearly a scam.
Well, here's my last story. FTC says Genshin Impact deceived children and orders this publisher to pay a $20 million fine and stop selling loot boxes to kids.
Ooh,
did you hear about this?
Loot boxes?
Yeah, does Genshin Impact have loot boxes?
Not in the traditional sense, no.
Genshin Impact publisher Cognosphere, another name for Hoyoverse,
Yep.
has agreed to pay a $20 million fine.
That's what shows up on all of my bank statements.
Oh, Cognosphere has agreed to pay a $20 million fine and will block children under the age of 16 from making in-game purchases without parental consent in a settlement with the U.S. Federal Trade Commission over allegations that it violated the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA, and deceived children and other users about the real costs of in-game transactions and odds of obtaining rare prizes. So, although Cognosphere accepted the fine, it says that many of the FTC's allegations are inaccurate. What are our thoughts, just offhand?
All right, so I hate to admit this, because I wasn't an underage kid when I first started playing Genshin. But when I first played Genshin, their currency system had me so confused. I almost unknowingly spent an incredible amount of money not getting what I wanted in that game. It was before I had a strong understanding of Hoyo style like gacha games. They hid the price of what it would cost for me to spend for their new character through like 2 layers of currency. I'd never really seen a system quite like it before. And I thought like, oh, if I spend this much, I'm surely going to get the character. But when I didn't, it was so easy to continuously try again and again. And because of their 2 currency system, you would always have like a decent chunk of currency left before you could do your next 10 spins. They're like, oh, well, I need to get more currency, but there's no denomination that'll ever equal out exactly how much you need for your next 10 spin. And I remember when I first played Genshin, I burned through way more money than I intended, did not get what I wanted, and I was very confused and bitter on like what had just like transpired. And I was a grown person.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the mobile game ploy. They talk about it a little bit more here. They say that they actively marketed Genshin Impact to children and collected personal data from them. But more importantly, they deceived players about the odds and costs of winning prizes and loot boxes and uses a challenging and confusing purchasing system that misleads consumers about the amount of money that players are spending on loot boxes on an ongoing basis and the amount of money that players would likely need to spend to obtain specific prizes.
I was horrified trying to pull, what was it, Diluc? I think I was trying to pull Diluc back then. Horrified when I looked at my bank account after.
I think a lot of it is what you said, where there's like 2 or even sometimes like 3 currencies, and like you can kind of convert them. And so the idea is that like if I just, okay, Alec, you gave me like $10 for these V-Bucks, but you got to turn the V-Bucks into gems, and then you can exchange the gems for gold tickets. And like they all kind of have these different rates that they go at, and the loot boxes cost tickets, but not gems, and also not like V-Bucks. And so like you get so jumbled up. And if you're an adult, like you can kind of probably like figure it out more or less, mostly. But if you're like 15,
I think even an adult, if it's your first time seeing that structure, it does throw you for a loop, because essentially how it works is, like any gacha game, they have their like tickets that you use for spinning. You can get those tickets by playing the game. You'll earn some as like gifts and rewards, but also you can spend the game's like premium currency to get the tickets. But that premium currency can actually not be purchased. It can be earned, but you can't purchase it. What you can do is turn their premium currency into the premium currency that you can then use to get the tickets. Now that currency you can't earn, but you can only purchase it.
And the conversion rate's not good.
What's the funny part is those 2 currencies, it's a 1-to-1 conversion. It's just to put an extra step. And so that they can also bar you from doing certain things with earnable currency, so that there are certain things you can only pay for. It's not a great system.
There's actually a word for it I found out from this article. These are called dark pattern tactics. That's what the FTC actually calls them.
Ooh, that
Companies
sounds
that
malicious.
deploy these dark pattern tactics will be held accountable if they deceive players, particularly kids and teens, about the true costs of in-game transactions.
What about an adult? I want my money back.
It's a term for elements of a UI that are purposefully designed to be deceptive, typically with the goal of tricking users into doing things unintentionally, mostly buying things. It's a growing concern in the video game industry, but also in 2023, they filed a complaint against Amazon for using manipulative, coercive, or deceptive user interface designs known as dark patterns to trick consumers into signing up for automatically renewing Prime memberships.
Man, now I want to talk about Amazon, because I remember when Amazon first instituted their instant buy button.
Yeah,
I made so many ill-fated and not well thought out purchases because of that. When that first was implemented, I bought so much stuff I regretted. It was insane. I had to turn that thing off. I had to dig into my settings and figure out how to turn that button off, because it was an actual problem.
Buy now will get you. It's if you're not careful, you can get a little spending spree. And
see, now any website that has buy now, it still takes you to another screen before it does it.
Yeah, with Amazon, it's like
at that time you press that button, it's on its way here.
That's what they want. They're always telling me about like getting a new Prime membership, and I know sometimes it auto renews, and they would obviously prefer it that way. It's the whole thing.
Well, I love when what the very fortunate scenario when my debit card or something expires, and Amazon's like, hey, your Prime's gonna expire. You want to get a new card on here? It's like, no.
Yeah, they're always so mad at you. Like, hurry, like replace your card. Like, we can't keep sapping money from you.
I honestly feel like every single website that offers a subscription should have to ask you like 1 week before renewal date if you want to opt into the renewal.
Yeah.
And if you don't respond, it should opt you out immediately.
Yeah, it reminds me actually a lot of the click to cancel legislation that they recently passed, where like, just making it really difficult. Like, the companies want to make it as difficult as possible for you to like cancel a subscription, and they have to now make it as many steps as it was to sign up is how many it should take to like.
Boy, it's easy to sign up for stuff. It'd be like register, click.
It's like card. Okay, you're
connect Facebook or Twitter. Click, done. 2 clicks. You're already registered for that website.
Yeah, I gotta get that out of here. Anyways, that's my stories for the week.
And those are mine.
So, without further ado, we will now get into our very first guest on the Pot of Greed for 2025. Introducing, all right, duelists and Yu-Gi-Oh fans, we've got an amazing guest joining us for the first time in 2025.
It's me.
Yeah, it's Alec. He's the guest. On this week's episode of The Pot of Greed, today we're thrilled to welcome Stephen Darling, or better known in the Yu-Gi-Oh community as Pharoahmone. Thanks for having.
I love that we're at season 5 now, where everybody can say my name.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. So, just a little bit of background. Pharoahmone's a longtime fan of Yu-Gi-Oh, and honestly, he's been a huge part of the game's competitive scene. He is a member of Konami's judge program. He's head judged at multiple events. Over the past year, he's also brought his expertise and energy to the YCS commentary desk, so he breaks down feature matches and gives fans exciting insights during some of the game's biggest moments. And beyond just the tournaments, he's also done Yu-Gi-Oh cosplay, Yu-Gi-Oh content creation. So basically, he just sort of, brings to life these characters from the anime and from games. And today, he's here to just talk to us, for a bit of like a behind-the-scenes look at, just like what it's like participating in Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, maybe talking a little bit about preparation, about mindset, some of the perspectives that you get from being a judge, from being a commentator. And yeah, we'll just sort of dive in the ins and outs of it and explore all those different topics. So please join us in giving a warm welcome to Pharoahmone.
Yay!
Cue like audience voices.
I can hear the angry comments starting out. Get this guy off the stage. What does he have to do with Yu-Gi-Oh? Blah, blah, blah.
It's funny because as it happens,
I'll start that one.
Actually, it's funny. Like as it happens, I feel like if anyone's done anything with Yu-Gi-Oh, they've probably interacted with you directly or indirectly or something. So even if they don't know it.
My apologies to all the naysayers. But yeah, no, you're right. It's funny too, because we're coming off the Supreme Darkness premiere event, and I was there, and there were some people who were explaining an out-of-body experience they had, where I've been in the scene for a long time, and I used to actually show up to sneak preview events, as they used to be called, in like full cosplay, like hunting down the character cards as the characters, and they were like, yeah, I was watching the video, and I thought, is that Jaden? I'm like, yes, that's me. My apologies. Yeah, I'm still kicking.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually feel like Jaden's probably your most like iconic overall look, right behind like Pharaoh, right? Like I would say.
Yeah, Jaden I used to wear a lot because it's easier because you've put on my Pharaoh costume. I know that one's buried on the YouTube channel, but you know like how unseemly it is to have a giant headpiece like that. So it's not meant for everyday card competitions and stuff like that. If you do 9 rounds, that's a little rough. But Jaden's really easy. I mean, it's a wig too. It wasn't my natural hair, but you just throw everything on and you're just in like pants and a coat. Yeah. So it's really easy to do 9 rounds in that and like not blink or worry about it.
So I guess just to start us off, I kind of gave you that introduction, but really I'll turn that back over to you. Just sort of like, who would you say you are as a Yu-Gi-Oh person? Like, what's kind of your story with all of it?
I usually say just another duelist, but it's true that like I'm a very ambitious little duelist. My main goal in Yu-Gi-Oh, and I've said this before on streams and stuff, is that a lot of people love this game like so much, but I've been around since the beginning, since it first came out, 2000, I think 1 for the anime, 2002 for the card game, and I've been watching and playing ever since. I always try to remind people they like Yu-Gi-Oh! And you're like, wait, what does that mean? But the idea is that if you're getting out of bed at like 5 o'clock in the morning, talking to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Judge fam, like as they're listening to this, or even earlier, these people, whether you're competing or you're judging or you're helping put the event on, they put like their life and their blood and their sweat and their tears into it. And like psychologically and philosophically, I'm like fascinated by that because Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm not saying anything bad about these people, but people are like, man, I wish that this card did that, or I wish that this card, could be this, or I wish more of that. And they're always like wanting something more. And I'm like, yeah, but you love this game, or you like wouldn't be here. And they're like, yeah, I love this game. So really like my whole deal is just reminding people of that good feeling that they had when they like first watched the anime, or they like picked up the deck and like, oh my gosh, I know how this works. Mm-hmm. But it is true that like primarily I'm a content creator who just happens to have a huge competitive background to them.
Do you take any of that energy into your judging, that trying to harken back to the good old days?
I think with the judging, yes, but it's a different voice in the judging because, people love Yu-Gi-Oh! In all different ways, but like in the judge program, it's a very different vibe because again, you're up at like really early because you got to be up there at like 7 a.m. sometimes. 7 a.m. was like luxurious. That's like sleeping in, some judges might say. But you do have to remind people like, no, dude, this is for a good cause. Or like, hey, that duelist gave you a little bit of trouble, but think about like these people out there or that. And there are a lot of judges who could probably type now, they'll roll their eyes. They will get back to work and they'll have a smile on their face. So a little bit, yeah, I try, but it doesn't play the same way when you're in very serious mode behind the scenes.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, just speaking of the whole judge thing, I have some limited experience with judging. I've judged at like a couple of regionals, almost as more in like a voluntary role. This was many, many years ago. And I'll be honest,
Upper Deck era? In the Upper Deck era?
Oh, no, not that far back. But like, I remember just telling myself, like, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. Not because it was like awful or anything like that. I just think that it does feel like it's like it's a job. Like it seems like it's a tall order. I mean, like having done it as long as you have, like, what was it like when you first started? Like, what made you want to judge? Because I imagine that's changed a little bit.
I didn't cut you off, but you really put me back. It's true. I've been doing the judging thing for, I guess it's 16 years now, because Konami took the program back over in 2009. And initially, I had like a judge. I had like my whole thing done with Upper Deck, but I wasn't as into it. And many people from that era will remember I was always playing or cosplaying or doing stuff. When Konami took it over originally, I'm like, wow, the Japanese corporation is really going to be a part of this. I would love to, volunteer to help, use the experience I had in Upper Deck and like make that make sense in the new era when everybody was figuring stuff out. So when I got started, I didn't have like this extreme vision that I'd be doing it like at all these different levels. But when I got into it, what I realized is a lot of people maybe needed help like putting words to what they were trying to explain. But when I was like a beginner judge, I'm not saying I was awful, but I was a beginner, just like anybody else. And I remember like every silly little mistake, and I'm happy to talk about those. And I'm sorry for whoever it is. It's like, yeah, that was me. Yeah, you messed up. But being a judge is a job. It's really serious because in the same way, yeah, you're giving up your tournament experience. You're doing that to preserve the tournament experience of others. And once like the newness wore off and I was like, okay, no, you're really doing this. What you do has real impact on people's lives. I took that as serious as I would anything else. And I think that's the best way to not succeed as a judge, because that's not the right word for it, but just preserve the integrity of the event. Put everybody else forward and think about what you're doing. And like, if somebody looked at you for 2 seconds, was just like, hey, what's he doing? Does that look like you're helping the tournament, right? And so there's all kinds of different ways to like stry out that out, and I'm happy to do that, but I also don't want to just talk the whole time.
No, I totally understand. I mean, like I said, I was just kind of curious about like, judging, and so that's sort of how I ended up getting into it. And I tried it out, and I just kind of found that it was fun. I didn't mind. I liked explaining things to people and kind of being able to help out, but I also like found, Yu-Gi-Oh players sometimes can get just so feisty, and I found it wasn't really for me. I felt that like, it's like I kind of just enjoy playing a little bit more, or even like maybe tournament organizing. But like, just being on the floor judge seems like
I don't have the patience for it. I wish I could judge so I could get the judge match.
You gotta have like the approach, and I think that there are some judges that like they don't read the sacred text that is the tournament policy guideline, and you kind of like forget what you're doing, right? Because it's not just like judge and they come over. The tournament policy guidelines, which more duelists like need to read, show exactly what your judge call should be. You approach the table, you get as much information as you can from both duelists, you confirm information with all duelists, right? Then you have to make a ruling. You do have to say something, and sometimes, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but sometimes a judge will get caught up in that discussion phase back and forth with the players, and at a certain point you have to be like, okay, is there anything else I need to know? Okay, I'm going to make this decision, because that's the basis upon which a duelist gets to appeal. And they actually can't appeal until a ruling happens, and you can check your policy guidelines for that. But you as the judge, you have to be ready to like get in there and pace everybody out and say, hey, you're going to get an uninterrupted chance to talk, but that's only because he's going to get a chance to talk uninterrupted. So just hold that thought for just a second. I know what you're talking about. And then shift gears. So a lot of it is, you're not being a parent, but you do have to have that like posture of like, okay, guys, no, don't worry. We're going to talk this out, but one at a time, please.
So Alec is basically saying like,
I mean, I just want to know, how do I get a judge mat without doing any of that?
You buy it off of somebody?
Yeah.
eBay.
I feel like I've helped finance many a judge's trip just picking up mats.
Yeah, I feel like Konami. Did you see the
ahead.
recent little set of the judge mats that were just recently announced like a couple of days ago? I think we talked about them last week. Like there's like the Malice one, the Silhouette Rabbit one, and it's like, man, the judges get the good mats. Like They really
There's
do.
a reason for that, and I hope nobody's mad at me for saying this. So those mats, and they mentioned this like in the official Twitter post, are travel assist mats. And so the point of those mats is those are supposed to be exclusive items for people that really went out of their way in order to travel. Like we used to have a judge that flew in from Hawaii, and you can imagine Hawaii to Hartford, Connecticut. That's a real expensive flight, right? And so those items are really incentivized so that there's not supposed to be a billion of them out there. And I don't get that stuff either. It really is just for people who travel a long way. And I can't remember which goes with which. There's like a tier system sometimes. But again, if you're picking up a travel assist mat, there's like a reason for that. That judge earned it because like they didn't just wake up and they're like, hey, cool, the YCS is there. They went a long distance for that.
Yeah. I also wanted to, I guess, just talk a little bit about commentary, because that's something that I know you've been doing commentary for a while, and I thought we could all kind of maybe like just share our, like, I feel like Konami commentary has changed, like at YCS as we're talking.
It's like night and day.
It really is, right? Like, like you remember kind of when we would used to tune into YCS events, and like the commentary just
like
always...
watching chess. It was like watching chess.
Yeah, it was kind of dry, like a little bit. It's very...
It was knowledgeable. It was dry.
Oh, yeah.
I would say that it almost felt like this almost dull play-by-play. And I know like dull is kind of a mean word, but I think that when I compare what maybe a YCS listening experience would have been like in 2018, let's say, compared to like what we got in 2024, it just feels like it's night and day. Like it actually really, and that's like on, I know like people, like that's like on the US end, also like EU events as well. Like it feels like everything's just been really like stepped up in terms of just the professionality, the energy. I mean, how do you like, what's the commentary experience been like for you?
So I will say I do echo and understand what you were saying about like previous Yu-Gi-Oh feeling kind of like chess, because I used to watch and get so excited when like Yu-Gi-Oh was televised for the first time ever, because while we've been dealing with like streams for the better part of, I guess, like 10 to 15 years, there didn't used to be streams for everything. That was like a privilege. You're like, oh my goodness, it's Yu-Gi-Oh, we can see it. But it's true that before, it was just a duelist game for duelists, and you would look over the table and you would see like Shadows and Mathematician and everything like that.
Oh,
and
Mathematician!
Like, I know what that board is.
I forgot about that.
I didn't.
I forgot about that card. That was good.
Yeah, no, it's a great card. But the idea is that I think they were speaking to an audience that already knew what was going on, and every person is different. Like every person I've had the privilege of shoutcasting alongside brings something completely different to the equation. And you've got like your really great, brilliant analysts like MST.TV's Tom Box and Asala, a YCS competitor of just amazing story in his own right. And they're very analytical and focused on the card game. And you get people who are also like vibes and trying to like elevate the sort of like sportscaster experience. We've had the three Stevens, right? Steve Rodriguez, Steven Kangas, and now me. We all try to bring something different, but I think what has changed is the teams that they've been assembling do reflect all these like different things. And I try to be like the switch hitter where I'm like, I know my competitive stuff, but I know all these anime references that'll get people in the chat being like, stop making anime references, please, we get it. So like I'm trying to add like the whole Yu-Gi-Oh experience. And you're right, lately it has been like this esports mod that's fun, and YCS Anaheim was just stupid. All those images and sunglasses, I'm trying to make the angriest face I can, and inside I'm just smiling ear to ear. It was such a great time.
Oh yeah, Anaheim banlist reveal, right? That was
that was probably the most viral moment we've had in a YSS in a long time.
I gotta ask,
it was good stuff.
What was it like? What was the energy like in the room? Because I wasn't there, and I just imagined it was just electric.
It was electric's a good word for it. It was much different because usually the Sunday on the YCS you can hear yourself think. So going back to like the idea of what's the casting experience like, Saturday is really loud and you're practically like shouting just to hear yourself think. But on Sunday you can almost get too loud to be like, hey, he's got a mirror force, and then the guy's like, oh, it's so quiet. Did I hear that there was a mirror force over there? So you got to be careful, right? But Sunday at YCS Anaheim, at first they didn't believe us. Right? like Jerome walks in with a briefcase and they have that little promo, and I'm watching the chat in real time. No one believes that is happening. It's just zero faith. And I'm like, well, and then we're all just like, And that's when the second skit happens, when I'm dragging Stephen Kangas just off the screen. And at that point, the chat definitely buys it. They're like, oh my goodness, we may actually get an FNL list update here. And I thought it was really cool, and I'd like to tell a different story in a second, so remind me about YCS Philly, because like YCS announcements FNL lists during a YCS are their own thing. Mm-hmm. But like what we had differently on Sunday is like the crowd never left. People at YCSs on Sunday, they want to go home, they want to eat with their friends, they want to cut, cool top deck profile videos. Not at this YCS. They just sat right back down in front of the screen. And so that was really exciting to see people treat the entire tournament like it was an event instead of like, oh, well, this is my stop on the bus. Good luck going to Top Cut Town. And then they would get out. So it was really cool.
Yeah, I do think that the commentary does feel like it almost is a bit of a part of that now too. Like it feels like it's more like, they're doing like these post-game interviews now. I feel like we didn't always have that as much. Like I think we used to just, what was it? Like maybe the winner of like
just like the winner interview.
Yeah, the winner at the very end would get like an interview, and that was kind of where that ended. But now it feels like, there's one after every round. There's more going on between rounds. I think it's overall been like really, really good. So now that we kind of have, I guess, both of the big pieces of like what you're doing behind the scenes in Yu-Gi-Oh now, or as I say behind the scenes, I mean he's in front of a camera. Yeah, in front of cameras, really. But so would you say, because I have some stories of this that like I want to share. I'm sure Alex, has some contributions here.
I've always got stories.
What would you say like are some of the sides of the Yu-Gi-Oh tournament that like the average player maybe has not seen, or maybe has just not like fully appreciated? Because when I think about like some of the conversations I read online a lot, there's oftentimes a lot of like talk about, like it just feels like this event could have had better pricing, or this event could have been like run this way instead, or they should have done this side event or something. Like, why aren't they doing more of that? Like, what do you feel like is like kind of the most common, I don't want to say complaint, but maybe just thing that you hear people say or assume about like the YCS experience that maybe isn't entirely true, or that there's just some sort of a caveat to it?
Well, I'd have to say first and foremost, there's really like two different like areas I want to tackle. The first one is actually the public event. So I guess the first one, secondly the second one. I think a lot of people who are the missing mid-core of Yu-Gi-Oh, not to invoke the specter of another video.
Where did you hear that? I don't know. Where'd you hear about that? I don't know where that came from.
Let me ask the entire internet. Where did we hear about it? That's them typing Paul, by the way. But the thing that I feel like the missing midcore of Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't know about at the Yu-Gi-Oh Championship Series is that it is basically an anime convention where you only need maybe $10 and a deck maybe to get involved, go to a tournament, compete, and win something, and still be in this giant morass of Yu-Gi-Oh fans. So I don't have the exact dollar amounts in front of me from the FAQ for any YCS, but there's so many different public events, and the pricing on it is insane. And just if you're like a math guy, technically speaking, if the YCS has 1,500 plus players and the Win a Mat tournament has 8 players, you got a better chance of winning a mat than you do a trophy, right?
I mean, that's right. I've actually always thought that Yu-Gi-Oh does public events and side events way better than any other card game in the space.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that.
So that's the second thing, and I am not throwing shade at other card games. I got a closet stuffed full of all the other stuff I play. I started on Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Card Fight Vanguard. I'm just putting those all out there just so people know. But the other thing I think that both sides, the main event people and the public event people don't realize is I've been to other card tournaments, and you have to pre-register, and yes, you pre-register for YCS, but if you don't successfully pre-register, our YCS doesn't say goodbye, we don't want your duel in dollars here. They say, no, okay, so you can't be in the event, but you could sign up late and you'll have a round 1 loss, or would you like to go to public events? And you just walk in the building. And so that's another thing that I think a lot of people don't know is you're just you don't got to pre-register. Is there Yu-Gi-Oh? Go.
Yeah,
That's all you need.
I have horror stories, actually. Without even just going into a load of detail, but just I've gone to just, I guess, whatever the equivalent of a regional might have been for other card games. And sometimes it's you didn't pre-register for this. You have to pay just this large fee to be a spectator. And by spectator, they just mean, okay, you're allowed to walk inside
You're
because
allowed in the building.
because there maybe aren't even actually side events happening. It's just like, oh, I guess you can just be there now. Yeah, I've always been amazed actually that like YCS events are like, I'm assuming they're just operating at a loss or like at a razor thin margins, because it's just, they're just letting people in the door. Like you can kind of just come, bring your cards, bring your body, and like you're good. Like it's,
You don't have to spend a single dime. You can go and leave, and that could be your experience, and that's valid. And not a lot of other card games can you just be like, oh, interesting. Okay, well, I will pick up that deck later when it gets reprinted. And
yeah.
that's it.
Look,
That's
I
all you
was
gotta do.
spoiled. My first card game tournaments were Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, and when I started diversifying and trying to go to other events, I was kind of dumbfounded. I was like, "What do you mean I need to register? I can't walk in?"
Yeah, I remember especially because you were talking about those Digimon tournaments you would go
Yeah.
to, where just sometimes like you had to register so many months in advance too.
It's
Like,
like-
do you know your availability on May the 17th of this year? Like,
Like right now, like no, I don't know. Oh, you guys didn't even hit cap, and you're still saying I can't walk through the door? Oh, all right.
yeah, no, that happens. It's but Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have that, and that's one of the things that I think is understated. But anyway,
And I really love the idea that you can just like show up, because it's like it's living the dream from the show. It's I've got a deck, an entry fee, and a plan. Here we go. And
That's
then
right.
if you make it, you make it. Cool.
I always say I have a deck and a dream.
yeah, I also do think that another thing that I have heard a lot of different opinions on, and I've really wanted to get like your sort of take on this, is around the Yu-Gi-Oh prize support thing. Because there's so many different voices out there around like, should we be getting cash? That obviously doesn't seem like that's really happening. But, also should people be getting, what?
Big screen TV.
Huge, yeah, just TVs and like gaming computers, or should it maybe be instead something that's like more focused on like just like card-based prizing, like some alt art things, some
sleeves,
some just very special. Like there's so many things I've heard.
dice.
And so as somebody who's been to so many of these YCS events, and like you've seen what the top players are, their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with things, what do you think about it all? Like,
Well, I remember both. I remember the era during the Upper Deck days where the prizes were really good cards, and I remember what that felt like to be in the room with those duelists. I can't remember the exact year, but it was right when the Gadget Structure deck came out. I remember entering the SJC at the time. I think Storm of Ragnarok had just come out, and I was specifically there to get the crush card virus because I wanted it for cosplay purposes, if I remember. And I was
this
running
typical
the Gadget deck, and it
Steven,
was,
I'm
like,
sorry,
good.
typical
Like,
Steven. I just wanted it to cosplay with it.
I just wanted the cosplay. I was going to get the crush card, and it was, I think, like the resale value of it was like $800 in like early 2000s money, which is technically a lot. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to win. And I remember like the thrill of it at the time because I was 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, and then I ran into a very notable competitive duelist at the air. I think it's Paul Leviton is his name, and he was also on Gadgets. And then I was 4-1. Okay, still got a shot. 4-2. Oh no, another Gadget player. 4-3. Oh no, another Gadget player. 4-4. And so I had this amazing tournament run and then down. But that was its own thing. It was coupled by the fact that I could just feel the crush card virus getting further and further from my hand. And that wasn't the only one. There was Shrink back then. I wanted a Des Volstagraph because Yugi. And when they were really good cards, that was really rough to be like, no, this is the anime, and only that guy's got a Blue Eyes White Dragon. And if you want to mortgage out your house for it, you can have it, but that's the only way to get it, right?
No.
So that's that version of it. My understanding is we're probably not going to have cash prizes, but there's like different things I could do. I think that I really do like the Another vs. Glutonia and all of that like cool normal monster prize vibe because it brings back like super like old school duel monsters like energy from the anime. But I know that people would love to have like a cool like stamp or something, maybe the way that they have like in other card games.
Yeah, I
where
know a lot
it's
of
like
the
it's
Bandai
same
games do
card.
the stamps.
It kind of makes your regular cards a trophy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me like a Fiendsmith engraver that's got a YCS stamp. That'd be cool. And should I play with that copy? Well, you know me, I open everything. But it might incentivize people, or at least create a collector's market the way they have it for like the World Championship, where there's like maybe there's more of it, but it's still like an exclusive thing.
One of my ideas was always doing something like the same tournament staples that you commonly see, like let's say an Ash Blossom, but it just is in an alternate art that's only the prize one. So that way you're not hitting that like crush card virus shrink sort of territory where it's like, okay, only this handful of really good people get to even use shrink at all. But instead it's like, yeah, you can play your common Ash Blossom from a structure deck. You can play like your secret rare one, or if you're really good, you can like have the, super deluxe whatever rare where
they should bring that gold rarity over from Rush Duels. I forget what that rarity is called.
Ooh, that's so nice. Do I have that in a trade binder that I could just show that to everybody?
Completely gold.
Because oh my goodness, it's like the best rarity of all time.
Yeah, like I've always thought like that would be a good, like an interesting middle ground, because it's like, okay, if you can't give cash, okay, fine. But also like it's the same cards that you know and love, and you don't feel like as a regular player you're barred from playing Ash Blossom. It's just that like this guy's Ash Blossom looks really cool.
Way better. In fact, if they chain their Ash Blossom,
that slap down.
If they chain their Ash Blossom to your Ash Blossom, yours always loses because it's not. Really
yeah. If you don't have the alt art, yours always loses. I also think too, like I know they've been doing the consoles as prizes, and I remember back when they were doing like PS4s, and now then they went to Switch, and then now they're doing like Steam Deck OLEDs. I know people kind of complain about those consoles because they, it's sort of hard to like sell a Switch these days and maybe make your money back on it or something. But my hot take is actually that I don't think that the consoles are an awful prize. Like, I don't know. I would I wouldn't mind a Steam Deck.
Like, when you think about the Nintendo Switch, I think it was like earlier on, but there were like Yu-Gi-Oh games for it. So the idea is like, we know you like Yu-Gi-Oh. Would you like a free game console that has Yu-Gi-Oh on it? The Steam Deck, I think, is a really good pick because it's a hip console that lets you like do more. You could play like Final Fantasy or whatever it is that you're rocking out that week. But it's also got Duel Links and Master Duel and so on. So the Steam Deck, I think, is good, but it's hard to like price that out because if you're thinking about like a tournament, you got to get something that everyone will like, and not every two duelists are going to like want the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
I just feel bad for those unlucky multi-time YCS winners who have to end up get multiple. Like those poor guys.
Yeah. When I think about it, that's probably what. Like when you see
Don't
those, like,
just
pictures
feel bad for those back-to-back winners.
I know, right? It just must be awful being so good at Yu-Gi-Oh.
Get good and win at other card games. No, the joking aside, like it probably does feel a little weird when you get like your 7th Nintendo Switch, right? That's for like Jesse Cotton and that very elite club, and you're like, huh. But it's not. Nobody could have anticipated that level of success.
Something that I've been always wondering that is like. There's like something I hear people talk about this, and I kind of agree, is it sometimes feels like the best prizing is sort of in the public events. Like, you know what I mean? Because like I always see that, these uncut sheets of like prismatic or whatever, QCRs. And then also there's like the giant cards, which, by the way, quick aside, I think the fact that like no other card games are doing giant cards is criminal, because like giant
cards are like the best prize.
They're so cool.
So they're going to clip that, and we're going to see giant cards everywhere in every card game from here on out, right?
I think it's such a good prize. Like,
it really is, though, because I have been around giant cards a lot as a tournament official and judge, and you look at them and you're like, gosh, what a great pick. What a great pick. And then Alec and I are the proud owners. You better still be the proud owner of a Blue Eyes White Dragon from the Quarter Century Celebration. And when you finally get a giant card, especially when you've earned it, and in my case it was against a friend, it's like it's just the best item. There's not really anything that's cooler than a giant card other than all the cool cards that we can actually play with. Because I don't know, most people, they're holographic. I'm sure it's hard to produce, but they're like really, really neat. But you're right that that's not something we give the main event unless we have an undefeated duelist, which there's so many like hidden Easter egg prizes. I don't know if you guys know. Do you know the undefeated duelist from day one just gets a giant card?
At the end of Swiss. I recently...
I did not know that.
Yeah. Which I think is actually pretty cool. You know what would be interesting? And I know that this wouldn't be like super feasible, but it'd be kind of cool if like, like Rizal and Malice are like the kind of top decks right now. It would be so interesting if like they had a giant, sword Rizal, or I guess like probably Detonator, something like that, and also like a giant Malice card. And so what the first place winner gets, like they almost get to like pick their giant card. So it's like, I won with my Malice deck, and so now I get like a giant copy of, insert kind of said deck's boss card. I mean, they can only do so many because it's like if somebody randomly won with Melfi's tomorrow, like they're not going to have a, you know.
Well, they should have a Melfi puppy on hand. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a giant Melfi puppy in the back. But like that could be kind of an interesting thing. Like, you know, just first place. It would make for such a great picture. Like I won with Ryziel, and then I'm just like, I'm holding this giant. That might be cool. Because I know when I see like the availability of those giant cards, because I've been perhaps trying to, you know, grab a few for myself.
You say a few.
Like I would love to have more. And like I look at the prices on the kind of the secondary market. It's like people really value these things. So I almost like that
they're seasonal too. They're like the best Yu-Gi-Oh fashion advice ever because you go and it's everybody, like House of Champs always puts up like the photos he gets from people who are there. It's always really exciting when you roll up to the venue on the first day to see what giant cards they pick because they're always really relevant.
Yeah.
Like even if it's Time Wizard, that's like here's Stratos or here's like something, you know, that people are really going to use. So yeah, there's a reason they value them too because they don't usually get double picked. It's like that's the one and that's it.
Some they just vanish sometimes. I have a story of a giant card that I've been looking for years and I've just kind of given up on its existence. Is okay, Alec, you know how we have, I don't have it in here, but like the medium giant Dark Magician from Dark Side of Dimensions with that artwork. We have one of those, and we got it for some Duel Links promotional thing in maybe 2018 or something like that, whenever the Dark Side of Dimensions world came out in Duel Links. And like, I know that there's a matching Blue Eyes one. I've seen someone somewhere online put up a picture of this card. And like, I just don't remember who put it up and like exactly where and when. But I've been told that it doesn't exist. Like they only made a giant one, but not a medium giant one. And I want a medium giant one to match my giant one. I've been obsessing over this for years, and I just cannot track down this card. And like I'm willing to, you know, put down some dollars for it. I really want to find it.
Well, you hear that,
I feel bad
folks?
for the Grandpa Moto on the other side of that conversation.
Paul will do whatever it takes to get that card.
I'll never sell my old card. This is so special to me.
Gotta duel that old man.
My grandson.
Yeah, give it to me, old man, or I'll trade you all of these. Yeah, so I would love to have that. That's something that I do think with like prizing would be interesting to see is like a shift towards more of like the giant cards and the sheets as like main event prizing. I don't know if that would entirely quell that conversation. Because at the end of the day, I know what people want
is
cash,
like, imagine you like win and you're like feeling all the hype of the YCS. You still get like your trophy, all your other prizes. And it's nice that you get something way down the line, but you don't know what like the production time on that would be. So there'd be this like lag of like when the cards were actually like unearthed and mailed to you. So we'd be hearing about like, you know, in the case of Melfi Puppy or whatever, like 6 months down the line, we're like, oh, well, it's cool that guy got a Melfi Puppy like 6 months later. Because I'm not sure how long they take to produce, but I imagine if it's always random every time, they're going to have to like make those. So it'd be like made to order.
Hey, a random Melfi Puppy in the mail is a gift.
That would actually be kind of funny when you think about it. Like you just, like the delivery guy shows up and you're just getting delivered like a Melfi Puppy, that specific card.
Like there's no time of year when that's a bad thing.
Imagine you change your mind and like it's no longer your ace monster anymore, and you're like, oh, I should have said something else.
It's like,
gotta go win another YCS.
Put Melfi Puppy down. Oh.
Yeah, take him out back. So another thing I kind of wanted to ask about as well is, have you noticed any, like, just abstractly speaking or very specifically, whichever you want, any difference in like what the tournament like mood or preparedness or just like trends with what people are like the way people act at tournaments, the things that they bring, like kind of the expectations? Because I was watching some video the other day and it was like somebody was kind of just talking about how it sort of feels like the knowledge is so much more out there with Yu-Gi-Oh now. Like knowing how to play a top deck the information is so much more available. So like the floor of skill at a YCS feels like it's higher in like 2025 than it maybe was like 10 years ago on average. Just like the average person is more informed and things like that. Like, have you noticed any changes from that, especially like when you're kind of walking around as maybe a judge?
Yeah, and it depends because as a judge, you know, you live to judge like the first event of a new format or when there's a big rules change. I can remember like when Inzectors came out. Man, could people not wrap their head around Forbidden Lance, Forbidden Chalice, and the Inzector monsters? Does the equip fall off? Does it stop affecting it? What does it do? But I do think that for the events I still get to judge, and I do still judge like regionals and whatnot. Some judges will poke fun like, hey, what are you going to judge against? I'm like, I am judging regionals, but because I'm doing other stuff when I'm at larger events. I do think that when I'm there, for the most part, duelists have a much better grasp on more advanced mechanics and recent rulings, and I think that's twofold. One, the internet is just much bigger than it used to be. Old heads like me will remember getting translations of OCG cards from websites like shriek.today.net and janime.info, in a way back machine, and just hoping that was a real translation. But nowadays, we have Yu-Gi-Oh! Neuron, we have the OCG, etc. So I think that the floor is definitely higher because everybody just has access. Not everybody has access to the internet, but most of the people who are competing are reading and watching YouTube videos and absorbing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! To absorb. But also, I think that duelists are challenging themselves a lot more than ever before, because if you listen to one of our most recent YCS winners, they'll talk about practicing with the deck effectively before it's out in Japan. And that's new. That's new.
Yeah. I mean, I think also it feels like there's kind of more of an expectation that you're very familiar with the micro shifts in formats and stuff at YCS events now. I've always kind of gotten that impression, just that, because I remember Alec, you once were saying, and I think this is totally true, that literally, when somebody wins a YCS, they there's this, I think the average person might look at the deck that they were playing and be like, okay, let's say Fiendsmith Ryzeal was is the best deck of the format, right? That's what many people would say. But I always kind of have an asterisk by it because I think it's more this particular build of Fiendsmith Ryzeal played the way that it was played this weekend was the best choice for, December 7th, 2024. You know what I mean? Or it's because literally the very next weekend, dare I say the very next day, it's up in the air again because now people have the knowledge of what immediately just won. And
I have a firm belief that if between day one and day two, if players could switch their decks, make changes, the metagame would completely shift between day one and day two. Whatever deck was doing the best on day one would all of a sudden just not be in existence on day two.
Well, but that is the experience of public events, right? Because when everybody, and this is their word, not mine, scrubs out of the main event, where do they go, right? They got a great deck, they got a hotel room, they got all their friends loving Yu-Gi-Oh! Public events, right? But they go into that with all the knowledge that's been ground out from a couple of rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh! And we'll find out, the Supreme Darkness's first major in North America is next weekend, right? It's YCS Orlando. And, there's some people who are oh, check out, Fiendsmith Ryzeal. And other people are no, have you heard of Fiendsmith Ryzeal Mitsurugi? And it's well, I've cut that out and I'm just doing Mitsurugi Ryzeal. We'll find out a real answer for our format pretty fast. And then, if there's anything that just blows out any one of those decks, all of a sudden you have to put that in your side deck if you're going to go to a public event because where all those people are coming from. But you're right. If we could do that in the main event, man, everybody would be like Bandit Keith and be like, haha, check out this Molcharmy you didn't know I had.
You know what that vaguely reminds me of? Just indirectly is how in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links tournaments, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, when we were able to switch decks between rounds.
Yeah, if you win, was it if you win, you pick two decks, and if you win your first game out of 3, then you have to switch decks or something kind of like that?
I think we had to Alec, we were in the Arc 5 Invitational. I think we had to switch decks. We prepared 5 decks. It was just show what you got.
And we just had to go through all of them, basically.
How crazy would that be just at a YCS? Just players just had to bring 3 or however many decks and just switch. Oh my God.
I think that would be, a lot of our top players would struggle because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a complicated game with so many different interactions. Some players will be able to handle it, but I feel there's a lot where that's just way too much information to try and download and synthesize.
But I think people would be up for
5
the task,
decks is too
right?
many.
5's too many. Make 3.
Because you could do that in Duel Links.
I don't know if you guys knew, but you had to mandatorily bring 5 decks, and once you use them, you could never touch them again. And so, like, just trying to keep track of like 2 people with 5 decks each, it was like a Pokemon match. Being like, well, he doesn't have Yubel, which means he's got this, Burying Emperor, which means he could go ahead and whip this out. It's like so crazy watching the paper scissors rock on just one game of that.
Like that can be really fun and interesting. But I feel like there's probably 6 duelists in the world who could really handle a format like that.
I know.
And the rest of us would be like, I really only have 2 decks, and the other 3 are just nonsense.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to lose to get that far. I'm just trying to play these 3 decks. These 2 are just so I can enter the tournament, right?
Yeah, so I actually have like a sort of that reminds me. It's kind of weird to ask somebody to give a hot take like just on command, but if you had to like change one like Yu-Gi-Oh rule, I'm not talking about like you can normal summon twice, not like so much an in-game like mechanical rule, but more like a tournament structure rule like that. Like does anything come to mind?
Showers should be optional.
Because I have one.
Most of them we've actually changed. And a lot of the stuff has really helped because the tournament policy guidelines, and I keep preaching that, somebody should read them at some point in their dueling career, but a lot of duelists, and this comes from real experience, they know every card ever printed in every language, and they don't know a single rule. But I can't like make people like take a test before they enter. They kind of have to like duel around and find out. And most of them have been fixed. Like the time rules, I know the time rules are really harsh, but I don't think that that's something that if you change it all of a sudden, that's like a really big commitment.
How do you, okay, actually, let's delve in that a bit because I just do not know. I know that people do not like these time rules, and I kind of err on the side of like, I'm not a big fan of them either. But I always wonder, like, what would be the improvement to it if one were to even exist? Like,
I do miss the days of taking some amount of turns because I think that gives a certain amount of finality to duelists. Like, they're like, oh, and then it came to the end and I did 2 more things and I lost, but I did those 2 more things.
Yeah.
And I think by having the opportunity to do it, a lot more duelists would be like happy with the general game. But when you're a judge, you're not there to make policy. You're just there to enforce policy. But the time rules have a lot of really important things. There's a great fighting game commentator who used to work for Capcom by the name of Seth Killian. And his philosophy when he was like commentating matches and somebody got hit with something, that if they got hit with it, they could not get out of it, is why were you in that position to begin with, right? Why did you lose this many life points? Why were you this down on cards, etc.? And, there's a couple of things that are baked in the game, like the slow play warnings, and you do get a 3-minute time extension with that generally, but you can't get any more time than is actually on the clock. So that can feel a little bit rough too. But I do remember those days. I'm like, it would just be impossible. I think a great example of what it looks like when a tournament is as nice as it can possibly be and is operating within its own rules, so nobody did anything wrong here. There might be some competitive duelists who are watching this that remember one of the first remote duel main events. And the first remote duel main event, I remember judging, I swear it was like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. my time, which meant it was like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. on the Eastern time zone, which would have been like the furthest reaching. And I, to a degree, I thought it was funny, right? But obviously we're all up late. But I was like, this is cool. I'm in my bedroom and we're running a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament and it's 4 a.m. and I got work tomorrow. Well, work tomorrow means 2 hours from now. It was really silly. But I feel like, that just kind of kept going and kept going and kept going and everything. And it's not that the tournament was run poorly or anything, but just by the very nature of running the very first online tournament, that was difficult. That was a rough sell. And I think if we brought back time rules the way they used to be without any different accommodations or anything, that you would have tournaments where duelists are just sitting around being like, man, what is going on? And you've seen those duelists that like in between the rounds, they just go insane because they want to duel. That's fine. Yeah. That's great. They want to duel. But, that's a very difficult problem where there's not going to be a winner or loser. You go back to the old time rules, everybody's upset. You go to different, not these current time rules, but other time rules, people could be upset. I think that adding 5 minutes onto the clock, though, because remember, we used to be 40 minutes and now we're at 45 minutes. That's helped. So I think the easiest Band-Aid to just kind of like make it a longer workday for everybody, but make more duelists happy, my suggestion would be like the 5 more minutes and just do 50 minutes and there we are.
Yeah.
Because that's, players have seemed to be receptive to that. And usually we add that onto remote duel because there's like extra time. You got to click into Discord and stuff like that. But I think that would be the easiest fix. But I'll tell you, it's, if you add 3 more hours and a duel is 3 hours and 45 minutes, 2 duelists will go all 3 hours and 45 minutes, and they won't be slow playing. They'll just have weird like fiber jar recursion decks where they like mix their banish pile and it keeps going.
Man,
they'll be unhappy. So you can't make everybody happy. You just have to do like they did in the show and just play with the rules that are on there. That's it. That's all you can do.
All right, here's my my hot take suggestion, and I want everyone's opinion on this. No side decks.
Oh, I'm huge on no side decks. Can I go first? Can I go first, teacher?
No, yeah.
So,
What's the pulse check on this? How do you guys feel? I want to know.
Oh no! Everybody I've had the no side deck conversation with is like, Steven, I love you. You're crazy. Get out of here. But imagine a world where you have the largest YCS in the world, and it's a 1 out of 1, and that's our world. That's our planet, but it's the OCG. My understanding is for certain events, not all events, they do have a 2 out of 3, and they do have side decks, but some of their events are 1 out of 1. And I love that for like a number of reasons. I feel like it puts the importance back in the duel. I understand that managing the Forbidden Limited list, it would have to be like scaled to make it make sense on a 1 out of 1. But I think it unlocks deck creativity in a way that other games do have.
Yeah.
So Pokemon doesn't have a side deck but plays 2 out of 3. So you have to main deck like hard counters to the stuff that like sweeps you, or you just lose.
That's
like,
exactly.
You want to show up. So I love that. So I'm big on 1 out of 1, and everybody I've ever talked to on that is like, you're crazy. Go back to Master Duel. Go back to Duel Links. Sorry, fam.
Yeah. See, I'm okay with 2 out of 3 for like, we're talking, regional YCS, just in-person paper tournaments. I'm okay with best of 3, but I just say best of 3 with no siding. I think that would be such an interesting thing to explore. And I think I'm kind of just Master Duel pilled at this point. Like I just play so much of it where like I'm just used to there's no side deck. So like, listen, if you are afraid of a board full of things that are going to negate everything, or afraid of like Labyrinth or some other trap deck, it's like you better main deck those Dark Rulers. You better main deck those evenly matched. Like main deck the Kaijus, main deck that, like, and if that means, pushing your deck count up from like 40 to 46 just to have an answer when you're going first or second and kind of like get matchup, cover a lot of matchups, I think that would test deck building in a really cool way. And I would just like to see that.
I think 10 years ago, I'd have been like, you're both crazy. But in 2025, Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks are so consistent that they start from basically nothing in hand. I think playing 1 of 1, it makes sense to me. I mean, your deck will likely pop off and do everything it needs to do in that one game anyway. So
here's also a thing about side decking too that like I don't know, it kind of rubs me the wrong way at times, is that like when you look at how side decking works now, it's the idea, I think 10, 15 years ago was that your side deck was like meant to help with a matchup, like make a matchup easier, kind of answer certain problems, or just adjust your deck's game plan a bit. But I feel like nowadays it's a little bit more like, okay, the side deck is meant to be a blowout. I am supposed to get kind of just this almost, I see what deck you're playing in game 1, and now for game 2, I get to side and get a near guaranteed win. I know that's obviously hyperbole, but like, I side in whatever floodgates there are, or like I side in, Feather Duster, Lightning Storms, 3 evenlies, and like now your Labyrinth deck just cannot function, right? Like I almost don't like that the side deck gets to be this get out of jail free card answer to matchups. I want people to have to like bear that risk and bear that burden in their main deck, like weigh the consequences of like having to make those choices. Like, do I want to main deck Dark Ruler no more because it's not very good against Labyrinth, or do I want to main deck Evenly or Lightning Storm because it is good against Labyrinth? And I hate Labyrinth, but like, which one is, am I more afraid of Labyrinth, or am I more afraid of facing, X other thing? Like, to me, that would be better. But I know that is very much not a popular opinion.
It's not. And the way I side deck, so I'm definitely like a creature of both camps. I preach, let's all, play like the anime and 1 out of 1 and Master Duel style. But when I side deck, it is ever since like I think Black Wings was the first format where I'm like, no, the side deck is just to make anything oppressing me be oppressed, right?
Yep.
Like Consecrated Light, Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. Like I was taking no prisoners. But I think that I've kind of formulated a response here, and hear me out, this is crazy. 1 out of 1, 30 minutes, old time rules. And I think you probably see a lot more 60-card decks because people will be like, I just need the weirdness. I just need to make sure that I bury the weirdness in here, so maybe I draw the out. But that might give people like that feeling they've gotten it, and it gives you enough time to have like the 10-minute first turn. Cool, now I'll have a 10-minute first turn. Now we actually have 10 minutes to play the game, right?
And either way, like I think it actually tames some of that time issue too. Because like, even if you were doing like best of 3 with no siding, let's say, now there's none of that like, oh, someone's like siding extra slow and they're taking all 3 minutes just to slow, like just to burn time.
It's not supposed to be all 3 minutes. That 3 minutes is for you to present your deck and be ready. So by 2 minutes and 59 seconds, this is the motion you should be making. You should be presenting the deck with somebody. It's not like 3 minutes, okay, stop, then shuffle up, and then present. So you got to make sure your judge is keeping time there.
Yeah, like I just think that would be good because it's like we don't have to worry about any of that because it's like, listen, your deck's not changing. So we're into the next game. I mean, maybe like you can take like 30 seconds to reflect. But yeah, there's no siding. You just get in the next game just and like just strap in and go. Alec, do you have a hot take for?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I got one.
What do you have?
So from now on, all tournaments have to be played Highlander.
Oh,
that's almost like alt
so
format.
What do you do about like?
No, it's not going to be an alt format.
Dragon.
It is the format.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, every card is limited.
Subs now.
But like, I think that would be so interesting with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because we have so many engines that are just one card start engines that you could run a 60-card deck of like 5 different engines and you just go.
Yeah. I wouldn't hate it.
Nothing changes is what I'm hearing.
I mean, I wouldn't hate it. Like I know like people talk about this a lot, but I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Experimenting with a few other formats could be just a fun thing. Like there's so many cards come out in this game and like they either go unnoticed or it's just they've kind of been decided that they are not great to use because of the structure of tournaments that we have today. But like every time you explore a different format, a new card has a chance to become very viable or like very potent. And so like I don't know, I'm down for some Highlander. I don't know.
It's way more doable now than it's ever been in Yu-Gi-Oh!
That's definitely
and there's
true.
like fan formats too, like a domain format uses the Highlander thing, and I think it's like a 60-card minimum deck too. So like other people are figuring out that make your own fun with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a vibe. So maybe.
But now let's force everyone to make my fun.
Yeah.
Force
on
them.
me, not
That's Mystic Mind talk if I ever heard it.
Okay, so last thing I wanted to talk about before we get into a couple of viewer questions from the pot of greed, is so if I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player today and I'm preparing to come to a YCS today, what are like the top of mind things that I need to do on my way there? Like what am I not like on my like literally like as I'm walking the door, but you know what I mean? Like just what should I be doing before I come to a YCS? And I've never been to one, and this is my first one.
So if it's your first YCS, because it's different depending on what you want to do. If you've been to like 10 of these and now you're competing to be the champion, your testing regimen, what you're doing is going to be totally different than somebody going for the first time. But somebody going for the first time really just needs to think about like the checklist of like all the things they need to have with them. And part of that actually just comes from reading like the tournament preparation guide in the tournament policy guidelines. So you need a pen.
What are these
as silly as that sounds, go find a pen. You need paper. Don't try to look for a pen and paper at the venue because you know what? 1,000 other duelists are doing exactly that. You need dice. If your cards generate tokens, you need something that's tokens. And this sounds really remedial. You're like, hey, I've been to the first day of Duel Academy, but you would be surprised how many people show up and they just don't have it, right? You need to go ahead and bring identification of some form because if not, you're not going to collect any prizes, including in those public events. You obviously need to have your deck. but it's really ambitious if you think you're going to go through 9 rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh with your old sleeves and not need replacement sleeves, and you can't just sub them in one for one because you'll have like 60 sleeves or whatever that don't look good, and just like that one that's very shining and glistening, they'll be like, mark cards minor. That's the game law. Sorry, fam. So you need like just good tournament materials, because so many people see a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament as like the Master Duel experience. I'm going to show up and play so many rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh and win. They forget it's a tournament, right? You don't show up to just a NASCAR race just knowing how to drive a car. You show up with your crew, and your crew shows up with like nuts, bolts, screwdrivers, extra tires, right? And I feel like duelists don't show up with extra tires. So if you were showing up to a YCS for the first time, slow down, go Google YCS that I'm going to FAQ 2025. So for Orlando, YCS Orlando 2025 FAQ. And just like take a second, probably like 20 minutes, but like read it and just think about those things, because maybe you didn't realize there's a bunch of public events going on that have different formats that your deck isn't compatible on. You're like, oh no, why didn't I bring my Jaden Yuki deck from 2005 when like I could do that? You know, because you could play GOAT format, and technically Lost Millennium is like August, but you get the joke. And there's other events too that you would know from like Ring Meta FAQ. There's Master Duel tournaments. You can win like these amazing desk mats that can be gotten nowhere else but at a YCS in person by playing Master Duel at that YCS. So if you read and you prepare, and you're not just thinking about how to play the game, but actually how to play the game, you're gonna have a much better experience. Like, don't just... The dueling stuff's going to happen whether you like it or not, right? You're going to shuffle your cards, you're going to draw, the fate of the world is going to depend on it, and you're going to find it's Wadapon and you didn't add it to your hand from a card effect. But if you actually know everything else that's going on, you're not going to get in trouble, you're not going to have a weird experience, and I do think that more duelists should just spend time planning it like it's a vacation, like a trip. So find out what the local rules are, that's all.
Yeah.
See, all I heard was I need a Yu-Gi-Oh pit crew. Like a NASCAR, Yu-Gi-Oh!
They can do that. You show up, like I show speed with like a whole crew. Nothing in the rules says you can't just be like, and then somebody shows up. It's like, your sleeves, my liege, and you're like thank you.
Like Gary in Pokemon with my entourage.
Yeah.
And then when I win the YCS, I can pop the champagne.
So I actually have some viewer questions, and these come from the handy dandy Pot of Greed itself.
Oh, at least they used to.
Yeah, they used to. Nowadays, they write such long questions. It's kind of hard to like print them out and get them in there. But the point is, these are viewer questions that people submit. And since you are the guest this episode, we figured it would be kind of fun to answer the questions alongside you. So Alec and I will still, be providing our answers and insights. But also, we want to hear what Steven's got to say about this stuff.
Okay.
So these are all Yu-Gi-Oh related. So, it's still totally within the Yu-Gi-Oh territory. But first question is... Oh, yeah, by the way, guys, if you want to, you can submit questions down below in the comments.
Hit the link.
Would much, 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 much appreciate it. Okay, so this person asks, this is Skylar, the ADHDM. M stands for.
What's that stand for?
What do you think a good 2-player onboarding product would look like for Yu-Gi-Oh?
Paul, don't you dare bring it up.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to say the 2-player structure deck or starter deck. I think that was a good idea, but it didn't have the onboarding anime spirit to it. Like I did a bunch of demos at New York Comic Con where I was teaching people how to play specifically from the 2-player starter deck. So I did that like for 4 days straight for a couple hours at a time, like really getting people through it. And the way I usually teach people Yu-Gi-Oh is I'll ask them questions. Like you'll teach them something, be like, okay, so the way you attack with your Giant Soldier of Stone is you say, I attack with Giant Soldier of Stone. So what do you say? And they'll be like, huh? They'll be like, what do you say? I'm like, oh, I attack with Giant Soldier of Stone. So something that helps them be interactive would be cool. Like, I don't know if it needs to be the 2-player starter deck we had, but like with a video that you like play along with, or like a YouTube video.
I said the same thing. Yeah. I just sorry to cut you off. I was going to say like, that 2-player starter product, I've obviously gone down in history and saying some not super kind things about it. And I do stand by the fact that I think that it was a product that kind of felt a little bit like not quite finished, I guess. I just felt like it was maybe missing something. And I like your idea of like a video component to follow along with would be, I think that would like have really helped. But sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I think that if it doesn't have a video, right, if it's just supposed to come in a box and teach people, I like that they used advanced mechanics. I do agree with the idea that like one player learns one set of mechanics and the other player learns the other so that maybe they can swap afterwards. But I think that it needed something that was less generic, because starter decks, and they've always been like this throughout Yu-Gi-Oh history, starter decks have no structure because they're not structure decks. But if it was something that taught you how to use a named theme, right? Whether it's like Gravekeepers or Heroes or Gladiator Beasts, that's huge, because Yu-Gi-Oh at its core is a game of making associations and then finding out how far you can stretch that. You're like, oh, this Gladiator Beast is wind. That means all the wind cards work with it. And you go and you do your homework and you read all the wind cards. You're like, wow, I could use this. Wait, but that works. And that's how we get things like Mitsurugi, Fiendsmith, Ryzel, Bystial, right? Because that's the greatest Yu-Gi-Oh minds just have great pattern recognition and are like putting them together through the database. So something that teaches players how to do that, but is fun, huge. We go a long way. Way.
Alec?
I mean, like, I'm basic. I'm like, they just need to have a Blue Eyes and Dark Magician 2-player starter deck. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to cover the basics of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And then you let people figure out the rest on their own. Like, at the end of the day, I firmly believe that people need those two monsters on the front cover. They'll be invested and they'll figure out how to play just because they think the Blue Eyes is so cool.
That's actually it's funny you mentioned that, because it's actually a point that all of us probably have talked about at some point in time, is that like 2-player products, I think, need to have kind of an almost built-in narrative, like a red versus a blue type of thing, or fire and ice, you know what I mean? Just some sort of a theming. And I do think having like Blue Eyes versus Dark Magician would be a really cool one. I've always said that if we wanted to have something that kind of felt semi-modern, like Sword Soul versus Branded, or, you know, kind of just picking 2 decks that almost feel like they're natural rivals in the TCG already, but maybe just
Eldritch versus Sky Striker.
Yeah, and just something from like a few years ago, but like the tactical tri decks, you know, the OCG kind of, they did that. Like, I just think like that way people can kind of get invested in a narrative from the jump, and something about that I think looks better on shelves, and you know.
They actually used to do it, right? When you think about it, starter deck Yugi and Kaiba.
Yeah, they used to do
That's
the
almost
pairs.
like a 2-player starter deck that was separated at birth. Starter deck Joey and Pegasus. Starter deck Cyrus and Jaden.
Also,
and you guys have put together a lot of theme duels, so you know they kind of like do soft complement each other.
Super recent example, actually, that I think was huge missed opportunity, though it's not too late, Konami, is Fire King versus Mermail Atlantean. Fire King got a structure. Mermail's just got support in the last like 2 sets. If those had just been 2 structure decks and you put them in like a double package, perfection. Like just fire, like flames versus water, and it looks really striking on the shelf. And you know, now as far as how easy those decks are to play, mixed. Fire King's kind of easy. Water maybe a little tougher, but like I don't know. I feel like there could be something there, because like it would tick the box of like associations, like you're mentioning, where like it kind of teaches people. Yu-Gi-Oh's about kind of finding synergies and like learning what these archetypes do for each other, as opposed to like, okay, here's random normal monsters and like stuff, and just yeah.
It focuses on the basics, but it doesn't get you to the fun. Because once you start doing pattern recognition in Yu-Gi-Oh, like a Yu-Gi-Oh card is the most exciting thing ever. Because, like, especially if you think about GOAT format, you're like, man, this card is awful. And they're like, hey, dude, look at its attribute. You're like, oh, it's a light. This card's going right in the deck, right? Because that'll change your opinion of the card based on how it fits in the overall puzzle. And I feel like if you teach that early, you get people like hooked on what it is we love about this game.
All right, so the next question then is this is kind of a lengthier one. So I've been playing a lot of the anime style decks, like the Exodia and Max Metamorph decks. It's funny, actually, you're building that one, right?
I am.
Yeah, and finding them to be great fun. They're bringing me back into the game itself and make me want to try out more meta decks. My only concern is knowing that these top decks will be hit on the ban list relatively quickly to make way for the next new overpowered decks. See Tearlament, Snake Eyes, Tenpai, etc. What are your thoughts on investing in these top decks like Ryzul and Malice, or just top decks in general, knowing they will more than likely get hit hard on the next few ban lists after their release? Do you think Konami needs to bring these new decks' power down so that they can last longer than just a year or two, etc.? So
So I can definitely answer this one, and my heart goes out to another anime duelist trying their hardest, because one of my favorite things to do is make the anime deck as good as it can be within the competitive format without like taking all the red eyes and max metamorph cards out of it. But you gotta think, since this game doesn't have a prize pool that's just cash, what is a card and its purpose, right? We also know the reprint schedule fairly regularly. Like, you can walk up to a duelist and be like, hey, when do you think this is going to get reprinted? They'll be like, August of the following year based on the tin schedule, because we kind of know the cycle of Yu-Gi-Oh! So what is a good card just for that moment? It's almost like a license to do whatever it is that card does for that period of time that only you and a select few others are gonna have it, right? Because it's a trading card game, and you open the box, you don't get what you want, but that's not the end of the story. You go find people, and I had that experience at the Supreme Darkness premiere event. I pulled Primate Dragon Ether Barrel. I'm like, cool, I'm actually here for the Metal Flame Swordsman card, and somebody showed up, and they opened up their pack, and there it was, quarter century secret rare Metal Flame Swordsman. And I'm just like, here's the whole trade binder, just take everything you want. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, that'll knock a few and that'll knock it off, etc. So for me, yeah, the value of the card, could change or something, and it's just like one of those, high value meta cards, as you want to call it. What's the significance there? Well, the significance is, the reason why it's so high is it's not like I opened up the pack and the pack said, okay, now you have a bill from TCG player. No, I got it from there, but I got it and somebody else didn't get it. So again, the value of the card is my right and license to use it until it gets reprinted, right? And so what I say, to answer the direct answer the question, I don't think there's ever going to be a scenario where there isn't cards that do well, that have scarcity, that people won't have a value on the secondary market, because it's been like that since, like, you pull up like an old Beckett price guide from like the early 2000s,
I remember
and it's
those.
selling you Mystical Space. It's like $55, and that's a lot to destroy one spell or trap. Always been like that. It's always been part of the game. So for me, at least, there's two things you do. One, if you are going to invest in a deck, you need to make sure that you have time on your calendar to play it, because eventually, like, the value may go down on the cards. You may be like, man, I didn't get any use out of it. You got to watch your calendar. You have to, like, try to say, okay, Malice and Rizel, I know they're going to be good for at least maybe a month or two. I'm going to go to locals. I'm going to show up and I'm going to win with this. Yeah. But the other thing you have to do is kind of notice when a card is, like, almost too good and your spider sense starts tingling, and you're like, oh, man, this could get forbidden. Now I really got to make sure I'm using it. So those are like the two things. Is one, maximize your time with a card if you feel like it is an investment. And then also understand that, unlike other card games where the value of the card just keep going up, Yu-Gi-Oh! is a trading card game where people really play it. It's not just collectors. So the value isn't just going to magically keep going up. It's going to go up as long as the card is good and hard to get. And then eventually, if the card is reprinted because people notice, oh, this card should be more readily available, then the value is going to go down. So it's not like a long-term bond or annuity for those like tech bros out there investing. It's more like commodities, and you constantly have to be like thinking of the trading part of the trading card game. So long answer, short answer is maximize playtime and think about it in a different way than you currently are, because it may bottom out before you know it.
I say, or you be like me and you take the L. When I get cards that are way too powerful to stay legal, or if I'm playing a deck that is that's meta, I just play them until the wheels fall off. When that ban list tolls and it's time for me to pay the piper, and my cards get hit and I bottom out in value, I just start looking at the next deck.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny you mentioned that, because I feel like my answer to this question is almost a combination of both of you guys', which is that, like, yeah, listen, if you're going to, spend hundreds on a core of any of these top decks, you better freaking play it. I mean, like, you better go to these, like, where's the regionals, right? What regionals are within, X hours from me that I can drive to, clear out this calendar? Like, because that's the thing, right? Like, if you're spending a bunch of money on these, get use out of them. Like, they don't do anything for you just to, like, feel like, okay, I have a Malice deck. It's, like, one of the best decks, and it's built, and it's happy, and I'm just sitting at my house.
That's a great place for it. You don't get it, man.
It's like great. No, you better like go to the regionals and like play and practice and get good with it, and like get those tops, get the wins with it. So that way, the 6 months or however long that these cards are around were well spent. And then at that point, it's kind of like you don't have to feel like it was simply a monetary thing. It was like, you know, you got value in the playtime. And also, just to Alec's point too, just because a deck gets hit on the ban list, like, doesn't even necessarily mean you have to stop using it entirely. Like, you can also still just, because like, you know, you were saying with Ubel, like,
my cards are my cards. I don't care what anyone says.
yeah, it's like, okay, so maybe Ubel is not like one of the very top decks of tournaments right now, but that doesn't mean you can't still just play it. So,
and if you're not very competitive, you can do what I did with the Ubel. Buy cards at the amount you think that they will be hit on the ban list for.
like, what do you mean by that?
So for a Ubel, the fusion monster, I got one copy of it, and I could have gotten 2, and I could have gotten 3, and I said no.
Oh, okay.
I'm only going to get one copy of this card because if anything is just and right in this world, this card is going to be limited come ban list season.
Yeah.
It was. And I wasn't really competing like that anyway, so why max out on a copy of a card that I know is going to be at 1 at best?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I guess just overall for me, it just comes down to like, I mean, you guys have kind of said it. This is a game where you are not spending like, let's say $500 on some deck and then expecting the $500 to be worth $500 6 months from now, 12 months. It's not that type of game. It's just not like, and that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just like, one last little quick anecdote I'll throw in here is I was doing a video with Tombox and Ruxin and Sam. Like, this is a few weeks ago. We were doing this little holiday thing, ranking all the Yu-Gi-Oh products from the year. And Sam was saying how, you know, like, he plays all of his decks in max rarity. Typical Sam, right? He has like Quarter Century Secret Rare, you know, Malice deck, Rizal deck. And like, he's like, I have an itch. I have a bug. I can only play these decks when they're max rarity. Good, fine for him. He'll spend the money. He doesn't care. And he was like, yeah, even when these decks get reprinted, I don't sell them. I just keep them. And like,
cool.
There are some players who can just like, for them, it's the play experience. It's like, he knows he's going to get the game, like the play time out of the cards. So the price isn't as important. So that's one.
You know who Sam is, because you guys both play Final Fantasy 14, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the guy standing in town, like with the fully decked out Savage armor that's the highest item level, and he's just there so you can hit /check. But when he plays, he knows this is it. There is no better gaming experience than that. So yeah, it's cool that it looks bling, but he's also playing at the highest level because that's where he wants to be. Right? Sam does want to like hunt down. It's not like these cards are growing on trees. He still has to put his money in just like anybody else. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. So those are our 2 questions from the Pot of Greed. We've effectively drawn 2 cards.
Hey.
And I guess that's where this kind of comes to a close. So
thank you so much, Steven, for sharing your insights and your expertise with us.
Taking the time.
If I may do one last.
Oh, yeah, sure. Of
I
course.
know people in the video who are like intensely following along. It's like, he said he was going to tell us the story about YCS Philly, and he didn't tell us the story about YCS Philly. Unsubscribe. Not going to do that to you. So we talked about how YCS Anaheim had like that amazing energy. I was a judge at YCS Philadelphia 2023, and they announced the ban list on that day. That was the day that like Super Heavy Samurai just snipped that right before it happened.
Oh, I know this one. Okay, go ahead.
Physically there as a judge, you're just like, I'm just going to do Yu-Gi-Oh! Judge things. Can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? What seems to be the problem? And I hear what I assume is a riot and a fight breakout. And I look, and I can't find where the fight is. I'm like trying to find like who, because I'm like the floor admin, so I'm in charge of making sure like judges like put some fires out. And I'm like, I can't find the fire. I can't. And it's like this dull roar of just like, you don't know what it's like when 2,200 people are excited about something happening on a card game. But I do, and it definitely sounded like a riot. And then maybe like 3 minutes into it, somebody's like, they posted the ban list. I'm like, okay, I thought something real, like a real emergency happened, but I'm glad to know that it didn't. So anytime they do that is just a wild time, whether it's like on the stream and you're like, yeah, or it's in person, you're like, oh my God, this is the thing.
I will say,
closing. My apologies.
Well, no. Just a small thing on that is it does feel like the ban list has almost become like Yu-Gi-Oh's it's little like what's the word for it? It's such a moment. Like just it's no matter when it is, it's just such a moment. Like sometimes
it will
for good,
change
sometimes
everything for every duelist everywhere, no matter when it happens.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah,
and
it's
people,
our Nintendo
people get
Direct.
antsy
It's
when
like
it
our
doesn't
like
show
little
up
trailer
either.
they play after every fighting game tournament with like the new character. It's our patch notes. It's a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, where can the people follow you if they want to keep up with everything Pharoahmone?
Everywhere. So I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, a bunch of things I signed up for when I thought TikTok was going to go down. We're back, baby. But yeah, I'm just on all places, and I'm a different type of Yu-Gi-Oh content creator. I'm not just producing like long form stuff. Sometimes I'm like streaming a full 24-hour marathon for some reason, and then I like won't stream for a bit. And then sometimes I'm doing like some intense stuff. The main thing I do with Yu-Gi-Oh is I just try to take different art forms and just try to like live in that space and then make it Yu-Gi-Oh. And so maybe I'm doing like visual effects or whatever, but basically just at Pharoahmone, which is Pharaohmone. I'm sorry everyone who has to type that, but you'll probably find me. And I'm even on like Spotify and SoundCloud. Whoops.
Okay, you've been everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, drop it on SoundCloud. That's a real thing. You find it, you will actually find real Yu-Gi-Oh remixes. Again, I'm sorry.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Thank you for
much.
just taking the time. We really appreciate it. Hopefully, you guys listening enjoyed the conversation. There's a lot of things to talk about, really.
Did.
And hopefully, maybe, perhaps, if you guys like it, we could have Steven on again because I thought it was a lot of fun. So. And that was our interview with Pharoahmone. We hope that you guys enjoyed it, maybe found it insightful.
I enjoyed it.
Got a new perspective. Yeah, we are planning on, like I said, having many different guests on the Pot of Greed this year. So stay tuned. Maybe let us know if there's certain people that you want.
Maybe start including some questions specifically for our guests if we can start announcing those before they happen.
Yeah, it would be probably good to
That would be
announce them
cool.
ahead of time.
We'll
Yeah,
try that next
little
time.
teaser. We've got an ex-Konami employee lined up in the pipeline for our next guest, so that should be really fun. Get some very fun
milk some info out of them.
peek behind the curtain. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's Pot of Greed. Next week we'll be back like normal, just the two of us.
Yep.
And catch up on any of the news that we missed. One other quick thing I just realized that we didn't talk about, but there's also not that much to say about.
What?
TikTok got banned and then unbanned.
That did happen. Or it
And-
didn't happen?
Yeah, it just did banned and now it's not banned. And the Switch 2 was revealed, but it was the leaked design that everybody kind of already seen, and there's no specs.
We'll talk about the Switch 2 when we actually have something worth talking about.
Yeah, so cool. Okay, fun.
We'll see you guys in the next one. Pass
turn.
turn.